And welcome everyone to our session. As she said, we're going to be working on Excel Beyond the Basics today. And the topic that I want to be starting with today is really going to be a feature called named ranges. So if you've been using Excel and you have information that you've entered on your cells and you want that to be available and to be used in different formulas, but be available across your workbook, there's a lot of different benefits that we actually have that are related to working with named ranges. Normally, when you go to a cell, we look at the name box at the top left of the screen and it will tell you what the name of your cell is. But there's going to be times that it's going to be best if you actually give that cell an actual name. Let me show you what I mean by that. And then I'll kind of walk you through some different ground rules when it comes to doing these named ranges. So let's say that I have this worksheet of sales data, and I want to be able to create a formula for the commission for each of the employees. And let's say we have 50 to 50,000 employees. I'm going to want to create that formula once and copy it down for the other employees. So if I go to G5 and I do equal, and then I take the total and I say that I want to multiply it by 4%, which is our commission rate, I'm using the cell G2. And if I do Control Enter, I'm going to get the answer to the formula like you would normally expect. But if I copy that formula down for the other employees, I'm not going to get the correct answers because of the fact that when you copy a formula, it moves from one cell to the next. It's okay if it moves from column F, going from F5 to F6 to F7, etc., but I didn't want it to move off of cell G2. So I'm going to go back to the original formula I created on cell G5. And what I'm going to do is first, I'm going to change the formula, well, I should say the cell G2. Then I'm going to update the formula to match. You'll see what I mean in just a second. Now, you may be familiar, let me backtrack for just a second. You may be familiar with putting dollar signs in front of the column and in front of the row, where you could do something like this to be able to lock a cell down. That's an option. And then you could copy the formula down and it will always refer to cell G2. But a more efficient way to actually do that and less confusion on some users, because I've had people come to me and say, okay, I have this formula somebody put in the workbook that has these dollar signs. Is that doing currency? Is that formatting the cells? And the answer is no, it's actually locking that column and that row down so that when it gets copied, it stays that cell. Well, that can be confusing. Plus, we want a formula to be easy for us to understand, as well as other people that we may be sharing the file with. So an option for that is to go to cell G2, and I can click in the name box and physically give the cell a name. Let me show you. If I go to the top left where it has the name box, click my mouse, I can type what I want to name it. I want to name it commission rate. And when you name a cell, you cannot have any spaces in the name. You can use uppercase, lowercase, you can use up to 255 characters to name it, but the big rule is no spaces. When you're done typing the name, just press enter. And now that cell G2 is referring to the named range. Now, if I go back to this formula, and actually let me just start the formula over to show you how easy it can be to now use that cell with the named range. I'm going to do the equal, click F5, do an asterisk. I'm going to click G2, but it doesn't put G2 in the formula. It puts the name of the cell, which is commission rate. I'm going to do Control Enter. I still get the same exact answer, of course, because it's still using the same 4%, but now I have a formula that's easier to read. It basically says take F5 and multiply it by the commission rate. So it's easier to understand the formula. Now, if I copy it down, it is an absolute reference by default. When you name a cell or a range of cells, it becomes an absolute reference, so we don't need the dollar signs to lock the cell down. Makes it so much easier. Plus, just so you're aware, if I go to a different sheet, like let's say I go to this worksheet called Maps, and I want to take these visitor counts in this map information, and I want to multiply by that commission rate. I could do equal C2 asterisk, and I could start typing CO. And when you look at the list of the functions that begin with the letter CO, functions actually have a circle with the FX in front of it. But notice the named range commission rate has the squares with the blue squares. That's your named ranges. Double click commission rate, I can do enter, and it's going to copy that formula down for all of these cells using that commission rate back on the other sheet. So a named range can be used across the entire workbook. That's a great benefit. Now, the reason that it copied it down was because this range of cells was in a table. Because it was in a table, it assumed I wanted the same formula going all the way down, just so you know why it did that. Okay, but anyway, I'm going to go back to references for a moment because I'm going to give you another example. So let's say that I want to do this formula to do if the sales goal was met. So we have a sales goal on G1 of $25,000. So what I'm going to do is create a formula that's going to look at their total sales in column F to see if it is greater than or equal to the sales goal. And if it is greater than or equal to, I want it to say yes, they met their sales goal. But if it doesn't match the sales goal, I want it to say no. So first, I'm going to go to G1. I'm going to click in the name box. I'm going to name it sales goal with no spaces. I might put a capital G because it's easier to, oops, I have to spell it correctly, sales goal. It's just easier to read it when you have capitals to separate the words. Sometimes you'll see people use underscores as well to separate words, which is fine. You could do that as well, okay? So anyway, once I name it, I press my enter key, and now I can go to H5 and create the formula to automatically give me the answer of yes or no. So the formula that I'm actually going to do is equal, I'm going to do an if function. So I'm going to say I'm going to double click on the letter or the word if, because I want to say if F5 is greater than or equal to the sales goal, I want it to say yes. But if it's false, I want it to say no. So in the logical test, that's where I need to put the fact that I want it to look at F5 to see if it is greater than or equal to G1, comma. If that's true, I'm going to have it say yes, comma. If it's false, I'm going to have it say no. Now, what I put in there was because I want an answer of yes or no, that's text. I needed to add the quotes around the yes or no. And I put in a comma to separate each argument. So there's basically 3 arguments to this formula. It's the logical test of comparing F5 to see if it is greater than or equal to the sales goal on FG1. And if it's true, it's yes. If it's false, it's no. I'm going to do a control enter, and the first person is a yes. They met their sales goal. I can copy that down for the other employees, and you're going to see the first 3 people met their sales goal, but the last 2 people did not. So just to show you another way to use that named range, okay? But let me give you one more example, because these have been just individual cells. Named ranges can be used, created, and managed on the Formulas tab of the ribbon. If you look at the Formulas tab of the ribbon, there is a group called the defined names group. If we go to the name manager, if we go to name manager, it's going to show you every one of the named ranges within the current workbook. You can see the one I called commission rate. The value is 4%. It refers to this cell. You could see discount table. You could see sales goal. You could see total sales, and then there's a visitor data. So the difference between the first four that have the squares with the blue is those are actual named ranges. But the last one, visitor data, is actually the table coming from the maps. So a table automatically is a named range, just so you're aware. But notice this one called total sales, and it gives an error, a hashtag reference error. That's because it's no longer valid. If I were to delete that references worksheet, I had 2 named ranges on that sheet, it doesn't delete the named ranges automatically. Unfortunately, because it's really a reason, there's lots of reasons behind it, but just so you know, you have to maintain that. So if the information gets deleted and there was named ranges there, you really want to go back in here and kind of clean it up every once in a while. And if you were using them in a formula, they're not going to work anymore. The formulas are going to give you errors because it doesn't know what to reference in the formulas. But anyway, if I select this line for this error of this total sales, I can click delete. Yes, I'll confirm that I want to delete it, and it's gone. Not that it's going to do any harm really, but it's a good idea to kind of keep this cleaned up so you just have active ones. So anyway, just so you know, I could create a new one from here, but I'm not going to right at the moment. I'm going to close that name manager window. And I'm actually going to go to the worksheet called lookup. I'm going to go to the worksheet called lookup. And in a few minutes, I'm going to do a formula that's going to be related to this employee information. And another benefit to a named range is if you're going to use a range of cells in multiple formulas, you don't want to have to keep going back and selecting that range of cells over and over again. Instead, you can name those ranges. So what I'm actually going to do is select all of this data from A9 through E49. I'm selecting all those cells. And by the way, how did I do that so quick? I clicked on a cell within the range and I did Control A. Control A selected the entire range. And what I want to do is have the computer take the headings from row 9 to use as a name for each of the columns of data. By going back to the Formulas tab, to that defined names group, I'm going to click Create from Selection, which means it's going to create named ranges. It's going to create named ranges based on the titles at the top of each column. Now it has a check mark in front of top column and left column because it saw the left column as text and it thought we might want to use that too, but we don't. So I'm going to uncheck left column and just keep top row selected. So it's going to use the top row to name the cells underneath each column. All I have to do is click OK, and it just did all that work for me. Now, how do I know what it just did? Well, I'll just click on any blank cell. I'm going to go to the name box. And if you've ever noticed on the name box, there's a down arrow. If you click that down arrow, it's going to show you a list of your named ranges. And you can use it to navigate to those named ranges. So if I happen to click on department, it selects all the cells that are within that named range called department. If I go back to that dropdown and I click on visitor data is going to take me to a different sheet and select the range of cells that are part of that named range, which was a table. And notice that new column that I added last time I was in here, it added that as being part of that named range because it's part of the table. If I go back to the drop down again and I click on earnings, it's going to jump me back to the worksheet called lookup, and it selects that range called earnings. So named ranges really do have a lot of different benefits to them. I use them every single day, just so you know. But let's take advantage of using those in a couple of functions. So what we want to do is, let's say that we want to create a formula that is going to give us the total earnings for everybody that is in marketing. We want to get a formula that's going to add together all of the earnings in the earnings column, but only if the department says marketing. I'm going to just go to, I'll just go to G9 as an example for you. And the function I'm going to use is called sum if. So I wanted to sum cells, add together cells, but only if it matches my criteria. I'm going to start with equal SU. Then I'm going to double click on the function sum if. You can see from the screen tip, it's asking, what is the range of cells I want to evaluate? Wants to know what is the criteria, and then what is the range I want to add together if it's not matching the criteria range, which ours is not, because I wanted to look at department. And then I wanted to, the criteria is going to be marketing. Then I wanted to add together the earnings column. So my range is going to be department. If I start typing DE, I can double click department. It selects all those cells, comma, the criteria, and I have to put it in quotes because it's text. I'm going to do quote, marketing, quote. Now, by the way, I don't have to capitalize the M. It recognizes lowercase or uppercase, but it has to be in quotes because it's text. Then I'm going to do comma. I'm going to tell it I wanted to add together the earnings column. I start typing E. I can double click on earnings and it selects that column. Now, if I do Control Enter, I can see the answer without having to move down and come back. I see the answer and I can see the formula in the formula bar. So I always do Control Enter so I can go back and look at the formula bar too. But you can see that it automatically is taking that department, and if it says marketing, it's adding together the earnings column. So it's so much easier to read the formulas by having those named ranges. Okay, so lots of different ways we can be using named ranges to be huge benefits when we're working in Excel. Now, one more formula that I'm going to do with that same data, I'm just going to go to H9, and I want to know, well, how many people are actually in the marketing department? So how many employees in this list does it say marketing in that department column? I'm going to use a function called count if. So I only wanted to count the department column cells if it says marketing. So I'm going to do an equal COU, and then from my list, I'm going to double click count if. I'm going to double click count if. All it's looking for is what is the range of cells that I'm going to evaluate, and what's the criteria. So I want it to look at the department column. So I do DE, double click department, the named range, comma, the criteria is going to be marketing again. And then I can Control Enter. That's all it needs. So there's 7 people that have the department marketing based on this current list. Okay. So there's a lot of different ways that formulas can be done in Excel, and by using named ranges, it just makes it a lot more efficient. Otherwise, we would have been going back and having to select the same ranges of cells over and over again. Great options to use. Now, the last one that I'm going to do is I want to get an average of the earnings, but only for the people that are in the marketing department. So I'm going to go to I9, and I'm going to use a formula that is called average if. So I want to get an average of the earnings, but only if they're in the marketing department. This is just like doing the sum if, but instead of adding, it gives us an average. So we could do equal AV, double click average if, and it's looking for the same criteria as the sum if did. First, it wants to know what is the range to evaluate. That's going to be department, comma. We want it to look at the marketing department, comma. We want to get the average of the earnings column. Control Enter. We will see the average salary. Oops, I did something wrong. That's pretty high average based on the earnings. Department, marketing, earnings. Why did I get such a high number? I'll come back and look at that to find out why. I had to have had, let me actually filter this real quick if you don't mind. Oops, data tab, I'm gonna turn on filters. I wanna see who is in the marketing department here real quick. Actually, I'm gonna do something here with you. Oh, for some reason it didn't look, is my marketing, they're all spelled correctly. Let me see what I did here. SumIF department, marketing, the earnings column. For some reason, this one, yeah, 712,000. I guess that looks right. Okay, sorry about that. I just had to double check that just to make sure it was doing the right thing. I should have formatted my cells. It would have made the numbers more evenly matched. But anyway, doing this average if, the sum if, the count if, and the regular if are extremely common that go beyond the basics of doing a sum, doing a max, a min, an average. These just kind of give us a step up from those basic functions. But one more quick thing that I want to show you, which is actually something that I use on a pretty regular basis, is I'm going to go to this dates worksheet real quick. And we have a feature built into Excel. If you have not used this yet, it's absolutely fantastic, but it's actually called Flash Fill. If you want to combine information together, you want to pull information from one cell to another, we don't always have to use a formula to do that, although you could, because there's built-in formulas to do this action, but the computer will do it for us. So I have a list of employee information, and I want to go to column H, and I want to pull out the extension from column G. The extension is part of column G. It's the last 4 digits. So what I want to do on H4 is give it the first extension for the first employee. So I'm going to type in 2099, and I'm going to do Control Enter to stay on that cell. So basically, I gave it the pattern of what I want it to follow. Now I'm going to go to the Data tab of the ribbon, and in the Data Tools group, I'm going to click the icon Flash Fill. It looks at the number in that cell and looks across that row to see if that number exists. And it found it in column G. And it said, hey, I assume you want to do the same thing all the way down your list, so it fills it all in. So Flash Fill can follow our pattern that we give it. One more example on the building. The building is in column G. The first one is lab. Then it's going to be central, HQ, etc. If I type the first one, LAB, do Control Enter, click Flash Fill again, it's going to follow my pattern all the way down. Great way to get information out of a cell, and it's not using a formula. I could have done that by using text-related formulas. We have left, right, we have mid, we have upper, we have lower, we have proper. There's a lot of text-related functions built into Excel, but I didn't have to use them, and I wanted the answer to be the raw data, not a formula answer. So this was an easier way to do that. And my last demonstration on this is I'm going to go to column A. I want to have the full name. When this information was exported from its ERP system, it came out as being last name, different column for first name, and they're uppercase. I want them to be proper casing, which there's a function for that called proper, but I also want to combine first name space last name, which I could do with another formula called concatenate, but I'm going to do it all in one by just using Flash Fill. Another way to do flash fill is first, of course, yes, you're going to put in the first one so it knows the pattern to follow. So I'm going to type Erica space Decker. So I did capital E, capital D, but I'm going to press enter this time. So I could have stayed on the cell and click flash fill, but just so you could see another way to do this, press enter and give it the first letter of the next name. So if I type an A for Angela, oh, it doesn't like that. Okay, let me go back and do it the other way, because usually it will look at it and say, okay, I think I see your pattern, and it's going to automatically do it, but I'll just do it the other way again because both works. I'm going to click the flash fill and it automatically fills them all in, following my casing as well as combining data from multiple cells. So using this flash fill is a great way to avoid having to do formulas, because formulas, well, they're good for keeping them updated, but if you want those as raw data, it's not as easy. So anyway, just so you know, we have those capabilities built into Excel. If you haven't used those, give them a try. Absolutely love them. Now back to a formula for a minute. I'm going to go to the worksheet called Lookup again. And let's say that we have, at the top of this, we have a search criteria where we want to be able to look up an employee and find their name, their department, their earnings, and their region. We want to find different information about that employee. Well, one way you could do that is by using a feature, a function, I should say, called VLOOKUP. It stands for vertical lookup, and it allows us to be able to look vertically within a range of cells to find a criteria and get an answer. Well, to be honest, I don't really use that function anymore, so I'm going to show you two examples. So first, I'm going to actually go to B6, and I'm going to do a VLOOKUP where I'm going to say equal V. I'm going to double click on VLOOKUP. It's giving me, well, basically it thinks it knows what I want it to do, because that's what Excel does now. It analyzes your data and it says, hey, I think this is what you want to do. So it automatically did recognize my formula, but what is it? What is it doing in this formula? Well, the first part, that A6, is the lookup criteria, the lookup value, I should say. So the lookup value is whatever employee ID is entered on A6. Then the next part of this is, what is the range of cells that's going to find that value and the answer? It's actually called the table array, which stands for range of cells. So it's looking at all the employee data, which is A10 through E49. So it selects that entire range, and the first column has to be the column with my lookup value, just so you know. So employee ID is the first column. Comma, the 2 is representing, it's the second column in that table array. So I wanted the name. So employee ID is the first column, the name is the second column. So we have to tell it which column the answer is coming from. So there's a 2. And then we have a false. False means, which is optional to put in. There's a true or a false option that is optional. But what it means is it's going to look for an exact match. So it's looking for an exact match of the employee ID. Okay, I'm going to control enter. Now, this formula says it's missing the closing paren. That's because it didn't add it and I forgot to add it, because when it does that auto formula, that's what it does. But anyway, let me just do the formula. So I want A6. I'm going to select this range of cells for my table array, comma. Now it automatically recognizes my range and it gave me my closing paren. I'm going to do control enter, and it automatically found the name that matches with that employee ID number. If we happen to go to A6, click on the drop down arrow, which is data validation, change to a different employee ID, it automatically matches that employee ID with the name based on that vertical lookup. So it says, look in this column for the employee ID, then go across to the second column to get the answer of whatever's in that cell. That's an okay option, great way to do things. But let me give you another way to do that same exact thing. We now have built into Excel an XLOOKUP. So we have a lot of lookup functions in Excel. There's a VLOOKUP for vertical. There's an HLOOKUP that does horizontal looking, so it can count down how many rows to get the answer. There's also lookup, there's match index, all kinds of things. But Microsoft came out with this XLOOKUP not too long ago that can do both. Plus it has other built-in options like for error handling, and it can do different things with, if it's true instead of false, where it's an exact match, it can be an approximate match. We can say if the approximate match is up or down. Is it a higher number, or do we want to go down to the next lowest number? So it has lots more capabilities than the regular lookups. So I use it exclusively now because it does more, and it does both an H and a VLOOKUP. So anyway, how does it work? I'm just going to go to B7 first, and I'm just going to do a quick example. Equal X, double click on XLOOKUP. And it's looking for the lookup value. I'm going to say I want to look up A6, comma. It wants to know, well, where's the cell, the range of cells that you want to look in? It's the employee ID. I want it to look in that employee ID column for that employee ID number, comma. What's the column I'm going to get the answer from? I'm going to do name. I want the name column. So I can use those named ranges also in the formula, but I'm just basically saying, look in this column for the criteria, and then look in this column to give me the answer. Much easier. Control Enter, and I'm going to get this same exact answer, but the formula is much easier. A lot easier than it was. So we have a lot of different ways to do the same things, basically. But what if I want to look up an employee ID number and I want to get the name, the region, the department, and the earnings all at the same time? I'm just going to pop over here and kind of do a little column with here. Region's not that big. Okay, so let's say that I want to look up an employee ID. And the employee ID number is going to be E009. And I want it to populate name, region, department, and earnings all at the same time. I don't want to have to do a separate VLOOKUP for department, earnings, region. I already did the name. I don't want to have to do that. The XLOOKUP can do them all at one time. That's another benefit of the XLOOKUP. If I go to K3, do my equal X, I'm going to double click on XLOOKUP. I want it to look for the employee ID on J3. I'm going to do comma. Where is that lookup range to find it? That's the employee ID column. Comma, what is the range of cells I want to bring back the results from? That's going to be B10, because I don't have it as a named range, all the way down through E49. I'm going to Control Enter. Oops, sorry, I meant to press Enter, but there we go. So what it just did was it looked up that employee ID out of column A. Then it brought back all at one time the name, the region, the department, and the earnings, because I told it to bring back the results of this whole entire range instead of just the results of one column. So an XLOOKUP has extra benefits that it can do beyond that, which is fantastic. But let's move on to a new topic. I'm going to go to the orders worksheet. And in this, I want to create a formula based on the extended price. So I'm going to quick name this column because I'm going to do two formulas with it. So I selected the range. I'm going to name it extended price. And then on K1, I'm going to do a formula that's just going to give me the sum of the extended price. Very commonly used, you can always do a sum. But then I'm going to go to L1 and I'm going to do a different formula. I'm going to actually do a subtotal, because if I filter this list of orders on this worksheet, I only wanted to give me the total of the records I'm displaying. I want to keep that grand total on K1, but I also want it to change to just show me the contents of my records. So on L1, I'm going to do equal subtotal, where it can do different types of functions. So it could do an average, a count, it can do a min, max, it could do a sum. I want it to do a sum. So I'm going to double click on 9-sum. Basically, I'm at 9. Basically, what that number represents is which function do we want it to do. So the computer knows that 9 equals sum, 1 equals average, etc. So it's a hidden code. So after the 9, we put in a comma because now it wants to know, well, what are the range of cells that I want to get the sum of? I want the sum of extended price again. So I'm going to do EX, double click extended price, which I misspelled, I can see. I'm going to control enter, and I'm getting the exact same answer because that's exactly what it should do. But if I go to this worksheet, click on a cell inside the data range, and I go to my data tab, click the icon for filter, it allows me to limit the records that I'm seeing. So what if I only want to see the orders that were placed for companies in the country USA? I could go to the country column, click on that drop down, uncheck the select all because I don't want all of the countries, scroll down to USA and select just that, click OK, and I'm going to get the sum of just those records. So the subtotal gives you the sum of just the records you're seeing. So every time that you filter your data, the answer for that will change to match that. Now that's all great and everything, but sometimes I need to take that a little bit further, and I want to see the subtotal for all of the different countries. I don't want to have a different subtotal with a different filtered range. Instead, I would want to do a pivot table. That would be a much smarter way to work with your data. So I'm going to clear this filter, and I want to turn this range of cells into a pivot table where I can say I only want to see these columns of data and these records within these columns. So right now you can see I've got row 1 is all the headings. Those are going to be used as the fields within the pivot table. A pivot table is a way that we can create a report, put it on the same sheet or put it on any sheet within your workbook and or on a new sheet. Click on a cell inside your data range, go to the Insert tab of the ribbon. On the left-hand side, click the icon Pivot Table. That will select your entire range of data in the pivot table dialog box, and it's automatically on new worksheet, and I'm going to keep it on that, but I could put it on an existing sheet and tell it which cell to actually start it on. But I'm going to keep the defaults and just click OK. So it stays directly connected to that orders worksheet, to that range of cells, just so you know. I'm on a new sheet. Right-hand side is where we build the pivot table. It will automatically build it in the left-hand side of the screen. If you look at the right-hand side, this is called the pivot table field list. It's showing you a list of all of the column headings. I want to see country, so I'm going to click the square in front of country. In column A, it automatically gives you a unique list of every country. Already, that's pretty cool. Gave us a unique list because there was over 1,000 rows of orders. That's a unique list of all the countries. But I wanted to give me a subtotal of all the orders placed in each country based on the extended price. So on the right-hand side, I'm going to click the square in front of extended price. It adds a column B with the sum of extended price. So that's a subtotal of all orders placed in those countries. Now, if we went back to the orders worksheet, could you do that? Yes, but it wouldn't be as easy. We could have done a sum if and said, if the country was this name, this name, this name, this name, this name, did a separate formula for each of the countries. That wouldn't have been very easy. This, 2 clicks, and I'm done. Pretty cool. But let me take this just a little bit further. What if I need to know who was the salesperson? I could click the field on the right-hand side for salesperson. It indents the name of the salesperson under each country. If the salesperson did not sell something in that country, they're not listed under that country. Like Nancy did not sell anything in Austria, so she's not under Austria. And what it did in column B is did a subtotal of all orders based on that salesperson just for that country. So like Andrew Fuller sold $477 of products to companies in Argentina. Now this right-hand side of the screen, just so you know what's going on, how did it know to do all that, to build that pivot table? Well, on the right-hand side at the bottom of the window, anytime you choose a column that is text, it's going to put it in the rows box. So it has the country, it has the salesperson. Then when I chose the extended price, that's a number column. It has numbers in it. So it automatically went to the values box because it was assuming that I wanted to add those numbers together. So anytime it's numbers, it will go by default to the values box. So great way to be able to analyze your data. But just to show you, it did the country first, then indented the salesperson because of how I selected them. Had I selected salesperson first, it would have put that and then indented the countries. But can I change it? Yes. By going to the rows box, I could take the country, the bar where it says country. When I'm hesitating, I get the move handle. I can drag it under salesperson. It just rearranged the pivot table. So now the pivot table has Andrew Fuller because it automatically alphabetizes, by the way, based on each field, but I'll show you how you can change that. And then it gave the sum for Andrew Fuller of everything that he sold. Then individually, he sold $477 in Argentina, etc., all the way down. If he didn't sell something in a specific country, it's not going to be there. Just like if you look at Ann Dodsworth, she didn't sell anything to Venezuela, so it's not there. It's not listed under her. It's not going to put a blank for her. So I love the way that this gives you those unique records. And it's doing it with just a couple of clicks here and there. Imagine trying to do that back in that worksheet called orders. It would almost be impossible or so time consuming that you would never want to do it. Here, it's a couple of clicks. And what if we change our mind? Again, we could change our mind to say, what product did we sell? If I go to the right-hand side and click product name, it's going to add the product underneath each of the countries so we could see what products were sold in that country to by which salesperson and how much was the total. So we have coffee, etc., under Argentina that was sold $322 and another one for $155. So it automatically is doing that. And notice once again, it's alphabetizing that third indentation. Okay. But of course, all of that can be changed. I'm going to uncheck product. I changed my mind. I don't need to see the product right now based on this information. And as a matter of fact, I don't even need to see country right now. I'm going to uncheck country. I'm left with just salesperson and the subtotal of the orders that they placed. What if I want to see the products or the name of the company that they sold something to? I could go back to the right, do company name. I want to do product name. So I could see here's the companies that Andrew Fuller sold to and the products he sold to those companies with their subtotal. Pretty crazy. And one more, if I wanted to see an average of the extended price, not just the sum, I could add the same field twice. I'm going to take the extended price from the top right, drag it down to the values box in the bottom right, and drop it. It's going to give us a duplicate column. But I'm going to go to the sum of extended price 2 in column C, and on any of those numbers, I'm going to right click. From that right click, you have a menu of different options you can do with the values in that column. You could sort them. You could summarize them by something besides a sum. It assumes sum, but I want an average. So if I go to summarize values by, I could choose average, and it's going to change those to be an average of the extended price instead. Lots of ways to manage your information, and that doesn't have to be a formula that was back in the original data. I only needed it here. So we can have unique fields be here in the pivot table that we don't need back in the original data. We don't have to store all that in the original data. Lots of options depending on what you need. Now, what if I change my mind and I don't want that average of extended price? I could go back to the bottom right in the values box where it now says average of extended price. Click on that box. Click on that bar that says average of extended price. I get a pop-up menu. From there, I can say remove field. It's going to remove that field from the pivot table. And I changed my mind again. I only want to see certain countries. Maybe I only want to see certain salespeople. We have different ways that we can filter this data. So if I only want to see certain countries, or certain companies, I should say, certain companies, I'm going to go to A3 where it currently says row labels. And just so you know, I could change that label to say something else. Maybe I want it by salesperson. Just so you know, I could click in that cell and change the name. But if I click the down arrow on A3, it gives you sorting and filtering, just like the filter icon did back in the regular sheet. But from there, it's currently on the field salesperson. If I click that drop down, I could say I want to sort or filter by product name or company name. I'm going to do product name. I'm going to do company name. I don't want to see every company name. I'm going to uncheck the select all, and I want to just see these companies. I click OK, and it filters this pivot table to just show the companies that I filtered by. So we get different ways to filter when it comes to working in a pivot table. I'm going to go back to that A3, click that drop down, and I'm going to click, oh, it did already clear it. How did it clear it so fast? Oh, I'm on salesperson, sorry. If I go back to company name, I can say clear filter from company name, and it will bring back all my records again. But what if I'm going to be doing a lot of filtering? Because we're in a meeting, we have this data open, and people are asking questions, and we want to be able to see different answers very quickly. I don't want to keep going back to that drop down. Built-in tables, pivot tables and regular tables, are a feature called a slicer, and they allow us to have a window of unique values for a field that we can use to filter our data. Let me show you. If I go to the, and by the way, when you're in a pivot table, you have two new tabs on the ribbon. One is called the Pivot Table Analyze. The other one is called Design. On the Pivot Table Analyze tab, I'm going to go to the filter group and click Insert Slicer. I can then choose the names of the fields I want to be able to filter by. I want to filter by country and salesperson. I'm going to select those two and click OK. It brings up two little windows with all the unique values for those records. I have a new tab on the ribbon when I'm selected on these. I can change the slicer style to be different colors. I can change the height of the buttons so they don't have to be so big. I can resize the window so I can condense the size of the window. Over in the country, maybe I want that to be a different color, and I want the height of the buttons to be smaller, and I want it to be more than one column. Just so you could see, we could be making changes to those slicers by being selected on the slicer window. But how do these work? What are we going to do with them? Well, what if I only want to see based on USA orders? I can go over and click USA, and it just filtered my pivot table for just orders in USA. If you look at Andrew Fuller, he sold $22,780.60 in the USA. But if I click Canada, he only sold $9,143.70, etc. So every time you click on the name of a country, it's filtering your pivot table. Well, what if I only want to see, and by the way, I'm going to bring back all the countries by going to the top right of that slicer window, that little filter with the X. I'm going to click on that to clear the filter, and it will bring all the records back. What if I only want to see a certain salesperson? I can go to the unique list of salespeople, click on the salesperson I want, and it filters the pivot table to only show that salesperson. But if I want to filter by date, and by the way, I'm going to clear my filter for salesperson first. If I want to filter by date, I'm going to click back on the pivot table again. I'm going to go back to the ribbon on the pivot table analyze tab. I'm going to go back to the filter group, and I want to filter by the order date. I only want to see the orders that were placed within a date range. I'm going to click insert timeline. There's a special way for us to work with dates to filter. It's called a timeline. It only shows date fields within your data source. So it's got the order date. So I'm going to select that and click OK. So now I have this little slicer window. I could move around wherever I want. Up at the top, I could change the slicer window to be a different color, whatever it is that you want. But how does it work? Well, it's got this scroll bar to scroll back and forth, and right now it's organized by month by year. Now this is a little bit older data, but it doesn't matter. You could have lots of years of data and lots of months. So if I want to see orders that are for 2019 for January, I click on the bar under January, and it automatically has filtered the pivot table to only show orders from that time period. But what if I want by quarters? I could go to the top right of this order dates timeline window, click the drop down months. I could do years, quarters, months, or days. If I choose quarters, I could do the whole Q1 for 2019, Q3 for 2019, and it instantly is filtering that information. Fantastic way to be able to quickly and easily limit what you're seeing. Now, of course, I'm filtered by Q3 right now of orders in 2019. What if I only want to see USA? I could go back to the slicer for country, click USA. What if I only want a certain salesperson? By the way, I can't choose Ann Dodsworth because she didn't sell anything during that time frame in the USA. So she's grayed out on that salesperson. Isn't that cool? So you can't choose her because she doesn't have any records that match the other criteria. But if I want Andrew Fuller, I'm now just looking at Andrew Fuller for USA for Q3. If I click Q1, it does the same thing, click Q3 again, or if I want Finland or I want Germany, it instantly is filtering. Once again, you can clear the filter at the top right of any of these little windows to bring all your records back again. For our last minute, I'm going to click back into the pivot table, and I want to create a chart to go along with all of this. So as I filter, the chart is changing also. When I click on the pivot table, I'm going to remove a couple of fields to make it easier to read the chart. So I'm going to go to the right-hand side, and I'm going to remove product name. I'll go ahead and keep, well, maybe I don't want company name either. Maybe I just want salesperson for right now, or maybe I want country with it. I'll do country and salesperson. And then I'm going to go to the ribbon again on the pivot table analyze tab, and I'm going to create what is called a pivot chart. So on the right-hand side in the tools group, I'm going to click pivot chart. I could choose the chart type that I want to use. I'll just keep the default for now. I'm going to click OK. We automatically get a chart based on the data we're actively seeing. Now, you do have a different tabs on the ribbon for the chart because I'm selected on the chart. So I could go to the chart analyze, the design tab, so I could change the chart formatting and things. We get all those same chart related features. But what happens when we filter? If I go to the timeline and say I only want to see Q1, I go to country and I say I only want to see USA, it's updating the chart and the pivot table at the same time. So I love having both because some people want to see the raw data, some people want to see it in a chart, and with both of these, we get the best of everything. And it's so easy to change your mind on what you want to see. By using the pivot table, you're clicking and unclicking the fields. By using the slicers and the timeline, you're clicking on the criteria. You change your mind, go back and clear it, do a different person, do a different country, whatever it is that you need to really narrow down what it is you're doing, or what it is you're seeing, I should say. So Microsoft Excel goes way beyond adding, subtracting, multiply, and divide. Highly recommend, if you have not been using named ranges, which is our first topic we started with today, you should start using those today. Read through your handout. It will give you more information. It gives you a list of the guidelines for naming them. I gave you a couple: spaces, not allowed. That's the big one. And then we walked through a few different formulas today, using those named ranges and some without using the named ranges. You have those, of course, described in different examples in your handout as well. Also, that VLOOKUP, highly recommend that if you have a new workbook or worksheet you're in and you need to use a VLOOKUP, don't do a VLOOKUP. Try the XLOOKUP instead. I gave you information on both of them. Those are the two most commonly used in Excel. XLOOKUP is now taking the lead of being the most commonly used, and I barely touched the surface today on how beneficial that XLOOKUP is. So read some more information in the handout. Of course, you can always look things up online as well. But then we talked also about, a little bit on filtering the data, but pivot tables is a big part of using Excel. When people say, I need to do a report, my first thought is pivot tables, because that's a way that we can get exactly the results to analyze that information. So when we refer to doing a report, we need to analyze our data. Pivot tables are usually going to be the answer for that.